country with hundreds of youngsters coming out in protest. The services determined to push ahead, believing that this is in the best interests of India's armed forces. To understand the thinking within the government, within the armed forces, behind the conceptualization of this scheme, I'm joined in South Block this morning by the Chief of the Indian Naval Staff, Admiral Kumar. Sir, thank you so much. I'm told that this is your first television interview since you became Chief, so I'm deeply appreciative that you could take out time. Thank you for this important conversation. I want to start by asking you, sir, about the kind of reactions that we're seeing from Bihar to Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh to Haryana over the government's new Agneepath scheme. Why, as the Navy Chief, as somebody involved in the conceptualization of this scheme, do you believe that this scheme is in the best interest of the armed forces?
Of course, I believe that this scheme is in the best interest of the armed forces. The scheme that is, I think, come of age. It is a scheme which was long overdue. What is the origin of the scheme? The Kargil Committee report had in its recommendations, suggested that the armed forces need to have a much more younger age profile in consonance with the other armed forces of the world. So this has been there since then, and numerous reports have sort of strengthened this aspect of it. And while we have been working on it, this is a transformational change, and any change is not easy to implement. It's not easy to decide upon. So, with this almost 2 years of planning has happened in this scheme. We have tried various options. We have examined the models in a whole lot of countries. And but we were determined that we need to reduce the age profile, because the age profile was around 32 years, which is considered to be a little higher, and we're looking at reducing it to about 25 or below 25.
Now, one of the concerns these protesters seem to have, and I was speaking to a few yesterday, is that 4 saal kya jobless. Now that's the one big overriding fear. The whole idea of coming into an armed forces position is that you work really hard, you get through. You work for 15 years, you take care of the nation, and then the nation takes care of your family. That's the whole ethos behind wanting to join the armed forces for a typical Jawan. Now they're concerned that 75% of them will essentially be jobless at the end of 4 years. How do you address this concern?
No, you have to see what are the benefits of the scheme. In the sense, it is a scheme which is helping to modernize the armed forces, make the profile of the armed forces much younger. And at the same time, the society and the nation is benefiting from this, because you imagine a soldier who joins, an Agniveer who joins, at the age of 17 and a half. He joins, he's trained, he brings in his bit of youth and vigor and vitality that is required for the services. And at the same time, he undergoes training, experience, he does, he gets tremendous exposure. For example, whether it's in the Army, Navy or the Air Force, the type of technology that he gets exposed to, whether it's a tank, whether it's a ship, whether it's an aircraft, he works on all these things, he operates. And today, the technology has changed so much that, for example, on a ship, the combat management system is more like, how you play a video game, or the panels are like that, the buttons, the mouse, the keypads, they're all quite similar to, a smartphone and so on. So there is a complete technological change, which the modern day Agniveer will definitely be able to hack it in much faster time.
No, sure, and, but that's for 4 years.
Yeah.
Their concern is what happens after the 4 years, when 75% of them don't get regularized in the armed forces.
So, firstly, the armed forces is not a employment generation scheme. It is a service. I mean, you join because you are patriotic. You join because you want to serve that country. You join because you want to do something for the nation. Nation ke liye kuch karna hai. That is what the ethos of this whole scheme was. To ensure that we build a nationalist ethos among the youth who serve for 4 years. they are empowered, they are educated, they get enriched, they get a Sevanidhi, and then when they go out, he's very young at that point of time. Imagine joining at 17 and a half. When you're going out, you're only about 22, and that age, the world is yours. You have you have educational credits with you to get complete your degree. You can you have some working capital with you. You got n number of benefits in terms of tangible and intangible things that you have gained. Intangibles, leadership qualities, time management, discipline, your personality, how you speak, how you conduct yourself, patriotism, the ability to work hard, face challenges. So, whole lot of benefits have accrued to you, which really cannot be, even quantified.
But you would accept that in places like Haryana, places like Bihar, and several other parts of the country where there are martial villages, people would join the armed forces generation after generation, thinking that once you join, you are taken care of for life. That pact between the government and the armed forces on the one side and these youngsters and their families and their villages on the other, that pact seems to be snapping. That is the primary concern of those who seem to be protesting.
So here I want to ask you, I'll give you two aspects of it. First is, do you want an all India, all class military, or do you want a military which is only from specific areas? That is something you have to give it a thought. The Navy today, I can tell you, is represented in 656 districts out of 773 districts of the country, and we hope to make it 100% in the next few years. How do you achieve it? You achieve it if you have a scheme like the Agniveer, where you are now almost tripling the number of people that you're going to take, albeit for shorter durations. But the aim is to have a Agniveer from every block in the country. Shouldn't you want that? Or should you have everybody only from one village?
Let's take the point that you made about all India, all class. Now, several of the Paltans in armed forces are, say, a Mahar regiment or a Madras regiment or a Sikh regiment, Jat regiment. And they are organized around either religion or caste. And a lot of military historians, when they are noting down accounts of military battles, say that the military cohesion, that esprit de corps, came because of social cohesion. Now, this idea that you have one India, one class, takes away from that construct. A lot of military historians, including Captain Amrinder Singh, actually raise questions about whether that move away from the way units and Paltans are organized currently is a good idea. How do you justify it and why?
As of today, I just had a discussion with the Army Chief. The Army Chief was telling me that almost 75% of the Army is all India, all class. They have, and this transition has been happening over a period of time. There are still some pure battalions which they will progressively look at how it can be made into a nationalistic, which resembles the spirit of India in the sense of all India, all class. So, but that probably may take time. I'd leave it to the Army Chief to comment on that aspect of it. But since you raised the issue of cohesion, let me tell you, cohesion, if you read a little bit about it, there are two types of cohesion. One is task cohesion and second is social cohesion. What we should be looking at is task cohesion, which is what, you have to accomplish a task or a mission that is given to you. What is the requirement for that? The requirement for that is training, working together, the quality of leadership, the type of pressures that you are under, the threat you face, and so on. But when you talk of social cohesion, that is related probably to the time you spend together. Social cohesion is not so much important. What we are looking at is task cohesion. So I don't see so much of an issue, because in the Navy, for example, we have all our ships, aircraft and submarines, they're all combat platform. Now, in these ships and submarines, when people are posted, they are posted for 2 years, at best 3 years, and then they move on. He moves on to a shore billet, and then he moves on to another ship. So you mean to say there is no social cohesion in these, task cohesion in these units? They perform all the missions, they are combat ready. So I want to debunk this myth that this cohesion comes only from being together for a longer period of time.
So one of the key ethos of the armed forces has been that soldiers fight together because they are committed to the national cause. And one concern raised by a lot of veterans is about whether 4 years is enough of a time to steep somebody in a regimental ethos, so that Paltan ki izzat becomes his driving force. Because as a soldier goes for an audacious mission, he needs to be convinced that the person next to him is as committed to the mission as he is. How do you think having somebody on a 4-year service could potentially impact that? Does it impact that in your view? How do you address this concern raised by a lot of veterans?
This is what I talked of when you address the previous issue of task cohesion. If you look at how the military is organized, it's organized from a set of 11, then it goes on to a platoon, then it becomes a company, then battalion, and so on. Similarly, in the Navy, we have something called a divisional system. That's a number, 11 people are put together. They perform under a divisional senior sailor and a divisional master chief. So these people, these officers and the senior sailor are supposed to guide, motivate them, look after them, see their professional grooming as well as any personal issues they have, etc. They bond together. They are together in work, in play, on board ship, in their action posts, when they do work in the 24/7, they are with them. So that is how the cohesion comes in. And I would expect the same thing in the army as well, because they are also organized on similar lines. And if you have come across something called the figure of 150, it says the most cohesive unit is a number. It's about 148.6, which is supposed to be the most cohesive number. The moment you exceed that, it's sort of the cohesion starts. Therefore, when you look at a company strength, it's about 150. That is how it is organized. So when the people are there together, it is. I want to reiterate again that it's not the duration that you spend together that develops the cohesion. It is the type of training that you go through, the type of leadership that you are offered, the type of activities that you participate in, and the type of threats you face. That is what brings the.
Sure, no, but I'm saying let's assume a commanding officer is to pick somebody for an attack on Tololing or Tiger Hill. Would he trust somebody who's here only for 4 years as much as he trusts a lifetime soldier? Because the person who's here for 4 years may have at the back of his head the idea that I'm only here for 4 years, after which I could be gone, versus a lifetime soldier who knows that this is his sole mission in life, to defend the territory of India and be a part of the armed forces. Does that then create a class among soldiers? This is a lifelong soldier, this is a 4-year conscript.
How do you say that he's only not a lifelong soldier? He's come for 4 years, but he's got a very good chance of continuing. Now he's getting an option whether he wants to continue or he wants to look for better jobs or better opportunities. Maybe he wants to only devote 4 years of his life. You're not looking at it from the point of view, from the other point of view, as to, even today when we have these, our sailors who join us, there are many who don't want to continue beyond a certain time. So we have a policy that if in the first 2 years you are not okay with it, then you can leave. But many guys realize after say 3 years, 4 years, so then it becomes difficult. Then they have to continue till 15 years of service, and then only they can leave. So here is an option for you. Try out the military life. What you want to give to the country. Work hard, learn new skills. And if you find that, okay, I want to devote only 4 years and I want to, try some other field, or, I want to devote my time to, there is an opportunity for you. So you should see it as an opportunity rather than as a, as something that is negative.
Let's come to the issue of keeping 25% and easing out 75% of these Agniveers. Can you share what the thinking is on how you pick the 25% and leave the 75% without allowing for subjectivity to enter the criteria for determination? Because in any ACR that is drawn, picking the top performers is relatively easy, but letting go of 75%, which is 3 in every 4 soldier, is a much tougher ask. How do you think the armed forces will achieve that without space for bias or subjectivity?
We are looking at a very transparent system. We are trying to harness the IT, information technology, to drop the merit. Agniveer, from the time he joins, he is going to be assessed for his performance at regular intervals, whether he's good at weapon handling, whether he's done his professional courses well, how does he perform, what is his attitude, has he adapted well to the service way of life, and is he keen on serving, and so on. Now, this is the major change here is that he has an option whether he wants to volunteer for further service or he wants to go off. Just as the service has an option of selecting a guy or not selecting a guy, so it is both ways. Both the Agniveer has also got an option whether he wants to continue or he want to look at other fields of interest, or he want to continue in service and pursue a military career for the rest of his. So this option is a great thing that he gets, in my opinion.
No, but if he doesn't want the option, if he'd like to continue, then he has to deal with the insecurity that he gets no pension. Because the one fear that a lot of people who are criticizing the scheme have is that the government is trying to cut, because of one rank, one pension, defense pension expenditure has gone up, and therefore you're basically hoping to cut pension bills over a period of time by creating this kind of a mechanism for recruitment.
That is, I think, pure conjecture. I mean, you can look at look at it from various prisms, to from financial angle and this angle and that angle. But I think the Raksha Mantri made it very clear that the government is not looking at it from the point of view of the financial aspect. In fact, he had said to us time and again that money is not an issue. Whatever money you want for training, because at some point of time we envisage maybe 4 years, 5 years, 6 years down the line, our training infrastructure may have to improve or to increase in capacity. So whatever money is required for modernization, for improving the training, for making the soldier a technology adept and technology enhanced. We are looking at AI enhanced soldiers, sailors and airmen. So how do we achieve that? That through training, bringing in new technology. You're looking at using simulators, emulators, improved training processes, and so that he will be a modern soldier, sailor or airman.
Okay. Now let's come to the issue of the rollout from here. Do you think, to assuage people's concerns and to ensure a smooth rollout, maybe a pilot project might have been a better approach rather than going the whole hog? Why do you think this idea of going for mass transformation might be better than a limited rollout, just so that everybody is kind of comfortable with how the scheme is actually executed?
See, I've been involved in the scheme for the last 2 years. It just so happened that I was the CISC and deputy to General Rawat, and that was the time this scheme was being thought of in the drawing board stage, and since then I'd been working on it for almost a year and a half. I went off for my Commander-in-Chief's tenure in between, and now I come back to see that the scheme had moved forward. So a lot of deliberations had happened. Various options were examined, and we had discussed whether should we run a pilot project or should we not run a pilot project. But the issue is that if you run a pilot project with a small number, then immediately you will have 2 classes of recruits happening, because you have to try out this pilot project for 4 years. So 4 years are going to have a normal entry and an Agniveer entry. Now this is was creating a lot of issues for us, because it leads to how will you adjust the seniority, how will you adjust the the issues of pay, the privileges and so on. So therefore we had to have a clean break and then move ahead. Otherwise we would have just gone into litigation and a lot of other
that
challenges.
Makes sense. One of the lieutenant generals who was on my show raised the concern about how the CRPF, the Central Armed Police Forces, may become a preferred option, because in his view 75% of the soldiers in the armed forces will be eased out, but in the BSF or the CRPF you get to stay till 60, and therefore they may feel that that is a more secure job, and the best and the brightest may gravitate towards the CRPF in comparison with the armed forces. How real a concern is that?
Firstly, I want to tell you that the armed forces, we are quite distinct from all the other professions. And how we are distinct? By just one fact, that we are required for ordered application of force under an unlimited liability. And this unlimited liability is what keeps us apart from all the other professions. Okay, nobody else has this unlimited liability to be ingrained into the thinking and your commitment to the service and so on. So we feel that whoever has to join the armed forces has to join us. He's a volunteer. He joins us for the love of the service, for patriotic endeavors, and for learning new skills and giving a part of his time, that is the Desh Seva option. So now in this case he is serving for 4 years, and after that you would have recently heard the announcement by the Honorable Home Minister, who said that Agniveers will be given preference in saying. Similarly, various state governments have also made announcements that they will be giving preference in the state police, armed police and so on. And also the industry leaders have also come out saying that they will look at how to facilitate the Agniveers. What we are missing most of the time here in this case is that the Agniveer, you must remember, is a guy who's spent 4 years, gained so much in terms of his skills, his confidence, his personality, etc. And then when he leaves, he's only 22 and a half, and he's got a whole life in front of him. He can pursue education,
But you would have heard some of the veterans raising concerns that some of them could go, because they are militarized, weapon trained, could go down the wrong route and end up in illegal activities because they may be jobless and frustrated. A lot of concerns have been raised about them becoming anti-social elements, or some element of them becoming anti-social.
I think that's a very far-fetched and very myopic view, in my opinion. Because even today, if you look at the total number of personnel who are leaving, who are trained in arms, etc., I think it will be, if you combine the CRPFs and the military, it will come to close to 80,000 to 1 lakh personnel. Now they are not all taking to arms. I mean, they all pursue their take up professions. They do. The sense of discipline is instilled in them, patriotism and self-confidence and all that. So I don't subscribe to this view at all. And further, they, in case of a national emergency, they are the ones whom we can rely on to form the backup in case there is an emergency and we require them either for disaster relief or actual combat operations, etc. We have a trained manpower whom we can.
But let's come now to the problem with conscripts. A lot of articles I'm reading raise concerns about what's happened with the Russian army in Ukraine, where the sense is that because the Russian army had so many conscripts and the conscripts weren't fully trained and fully motivated, therefore the Russian army faced a tougher time in the Ukraine war than it otherwise would. Essentially the point that because they're not as trained as a lifelong soldier, is a conscript as capable in war as a lifelong soldier? And would that, once you have so many Agniveers, would that be a concern for the armed forces?
It is too early to draw any conclusions on what is happening in Ukraine and Russia. Many countries do have a similar model of short-term engagement for personnel, and it is not something new. It has happened in the First World War, it has happened in the Second World War, and I don't want to delve into history. Many armies have done well, many militaries have done well. I want to again say that finally the armed forces work on good training, good leadership, and motivation, morale, cohesion, all these things. So I want to drive home the point that it is not really linked to how long you serve. It is linked to how much cohesion is developed in the unit through various methods which I talked of as a leadership, training and so on.
And you don't think that's linked to time that you serve?
No, I don't think at all.
Because the more you are steeped in the ways of the armed forces, the more you imbibe the values of the armed forces. And the concern is whether, because about 6 months you're training, whether the 2.5, 3 years that you spend is enough time to get fully imbibed in the way of the armed forces.
I don't know how, you're saying they're not being trained adequately, because even today, a recruit who comes in, he undergoes a basic military training, which is 22 weeks in the Navy, for example, and it's more or less similar in the other service as well, which is he does a 20 weeks basic training and 2 weeks training on board a ship. That is 22 weeks. Then he does a basic Part 3 qualification, we call it, professional qualification, which is about 4.5, 5 months duration. That is the training which he does, and then he continues. This next training actually happens after about 5 years or 6 years. So whatever he learns, then he sort of consolidates on that and gains experience. The Agniveer also gets the same training. So we have in the Navy, we have reduced the training from 22 weeks, we have reduced it to 18 weeks. We have reduced it by 4 weeks because we felt that there were certain things which were really not relevant, and in any case we are planning to reduce the duration. Similarly, so he does this training and then he goes for a Part 3 qualification course, professional qualification course. He does that for about 4 months and then he is on board ship, on board submarine, on board the aircraft. He does. So I don't see what is the change.
Admiral, before I end, I have one last question. If there is some young boy, or in the case of the Navy, girl, in some part of the country watching you on this broadcast and wary of this scheme or has concerns, if you look into the camera, what's your message as Navy Chief, as one of the people involved in conceptualizing the Agnipath program? What do you want to tell young India?
I want to say that the Agnipath scheme is one of the most transformational schemes for the armed forces. It gives opportunity for every youth to participate and contribute towards Desh Seva, a little bit of your time, maybe 4 years in the service of the nation. Come join us, empower yourself, upskill yourself, enrich yourself in many ways, professionally, face the challenges, become confident, gain so much of tangible and intangible benefits, and thereafter you can take a call whether you find this profession to your liking or you want to do something better or different. So that is what you should is my message to you. It's a fantastic scheme, completely transformational, and I don't think you need to worry about it at all. You should look forward to a very, very bright future.
Well, Admiral Kumar, there were lots of questions and concerns people had about the new scheme. Over the last several minutes, you were able to explain why you believe that that the program is indeed in the best interest of the armed forces. I thank you for taking our time and joining us for this broadcast. Thank you, Admiral Kumar.
Thank you.
Thank you.